Greetings. Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter.
First one to talk. There you go. All right. Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter. You know us all, I'm sure, at this point, and I'm sure if you're still here after that beginning, is Mark, who's on the far side.
What is the matter with you if you're still here after all that?
12th Dan, Rex Kwando, the K-Man. Just break the wrist and walk away. Just break the wrist, walk away. Me, Sean, and of course, at the end there, old Tricky Dick. There he is. There he is. We were just talking about two things. We were talking about Dark Tide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And Stupid People, which
Yes.
coincides. How are you digging Dark Tide there, Kelly?
I like it. I mean, it fits it. Look, it's a 40K game. It plays like 40K, right? It just like every 40K book I've read, ranged combat is nothing more but a thing of the past in the dark future. You're forced to run in and get in a hand-to-hand combat, and the game plays that way. But it also there's a lot going on, so you're not bored getting through any of the missions. I think it's a good time. It takes a minute. I think it you got to stick with it though, because it takes a minute. You know, just like every game, when you start and you're new into it, you know, you're not necessarily a strong character, so don't expect to go in there like a space marine and handle business. But you know, as you level up, it's good. The challenge fits. Yeah.
Difficulty level doesn't adjust for you being new. It just throws the kitchen sink at you right out of the gate.
Yeah, and it has difficulty levels, right? So it has the beginning, and then the starter levels, all the way up to heresy. I think it's like 4 or 5 different difficulty ratings for missions. But yeah, even on the starter levels, when you're a new character, the game's gonna throw it at you.
I like I said before, the AI is very smart. It actually picks you out. Like if you're doing from a distance, it'll come and find you and say, "Oh, you're a problem," and throw a tox flamer at you.
To that end, though, I mean, my difficulty with it is that it doesn't always take into account cover. So if you've got somebody shooting you with a neural net and you try to duck out of the way, no, you're getting hit. You have to be rather pronounced with the cover for it to matter. Or when the guys charge you, the big mutants charge you, you're getting hit. You're not dodging that.
They definitely there's a wide variety of things, of threats. They did a good job of picking out different stuff. So you never know what to expect, and there's no radar, there's no map, so you'll hear something yelling at you, and you'll hear it in your headphones, kind of the direction it's coming from, and then it just hits you from the other side. You have no idea where it's coming from.
And that part reminds me very much of Left 4 Dead. You know how like the smokers would cough and things like that. There would be the little indicators that something was going on. And so once you figure those out, so it plays like Left 4 Dead in a lot of ways. And I think I've said that before. There will be the roar of monsters on the distance, and so that's a horde of infested coming at you. Or you'll hear the ticking noise, there's a tox flamer somewhere. So there's that. The difficulty in playing on any level is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of people that play consistently. So sometimes you start missions by yourself and you're hoping to make it. People will drop in, or like the one today, there's just somebody who doesn't get the message. They're not moving through the map expeditiously. And so you just see them constantly getting knocked down. You have to backtrack to save them. That kind of thing. So it's something that really requires teamwork to make it truly effective. But if you get a nice team going on and you can make it through some of the higher level missions, you can level up pretty quick.
Yeah, you gotta be smart about where you apply your forces and things like that.
That and Rich, I don't know if you've done much with the Mechanicus lady there, who upgrades your weapons, but I find her upgrades don't always match what I can get as rewards.
No,
because I've got a transcendent power sword that I've spent quite a bit working on with her.
Yep.
But then one of the missions yesterday gave me a different one of the purple ones. I forget what they're called.
Exalted.
Yeah, Exalted.
Yeah.
That's just better. So, but that's also
wasted.
I mean, a bit, but it's it really calls into question some of the economy of the game, because the different credits and how you spend it and the amount of effort it takes to acquire something that then is just outdone by something you grab out of a random mission.
To craft anything, you need a substance called diamantine, and it's exceedingly rare at the lower levels. You really have to be at the very aggressive levels in order to get it in any kind of quantity.
Yeah.
And it's really tough to do anything without it to get past to the higher levels of weapons. And at the higher, yeah, very much so. It's not pay to play. The only thing that you pay to play for is cosmetics. So those are kind of irrelevant. But as far as the game.
I hope they don't do that. I hope they don't have the pay-to-play thing when Space Marine comes out.
I hope not. I suspect it'll be the same. It'll be cosmetic. If you want a certain type of armor or a certain type of helmet, which is cool. But yeah, I won't pay for cosmetics.
I want Legion of the Damned armor. That's what I want.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
I would be surprised if they don't allow you to.
Coolest.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if I don't know if in Space Marine 1 you could paint your own, create your own color combinations and things like that for armor, your own chapter combinations on the armor plating. But that'd be neat if they had some sort of generator for that.
I don't know, man. I played Call
It'd
of
be a
Duty
game
a
unto
lot.
itself.
Every time anybody can create their own insignia in Call of Duty, it always ended up being something risque and a bit offensive.
The finger,
Yeah.
That kind of crap. Yeah.
So many penises.
But in 40K, I wonder how much of that would actually happen as opposed to people just, bringing their own chapter in, because a lot of people create their own chapters,
Yeah.
And I wonder how many would actually do that. The last one in the original Space Marine one, I know everybody ended up trying to create, with the limited options they had, whatever their favorite chapter was and all that. But yeah, I mean, having something where you could actually have like you were saying, Legion of the Damned or something like that. That'd be awesome. Of course, everybody would be running around.
No, see, but that something like that should be limited. Like there's a limited. If you wanted to do something special for a limited edition, right? Somebody's buying the $200 box set of something. Here you get Legion of the Damned armor. Something like that would be cool.
Yeah, they do that from time to time where they'll give you the special cosmetics. They did that for the Harry Potter game. They had special stuff.
Legion of the Damned and Harry Potter.
Hey, Harry Potter.
I might have to look into that.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
What house was the Legion of the Damned part of?
Can you imagine a Legion of the Damned Legionnaire
and cleanse the planet?
That's right.
That sent you to the Legion of the Damned.
Walking through Hogwarts, breaking through walls with his shoulders because he's too wide for the doorways. He goes into the Gryffindor rec room and just lays waste to it with a flamer.
I thought Legion of the Damned was Hufflepuff.
Ravenclaw. But Darktide, it's a lot of fun. Like you said, if you play a public game and you get a group where everyone's like all for myself. Like in my example, we work together to get ammo. So because I'm doing long range fighter, so I need ammo, and ammo is exceedingly hard to find. But there's a lot of games where I'll play in the public space where a guy who doesn't have a gun just steals the ammo. It's like, why do you need this? You're just picking up anything that's in a box. Just leave that for the guys that shoot.
See, it never even occurred to me to play in a public game.
Well, you have to.
Like,
but
I did the intro that you play
Yeah.
by yourself, and it's like, now you're ready to play the game, and I'm like, okay, when are you guys available?
Yeah, you only
I
can.
haven't. I was like, public game? What?
Yeah, you can only
No,
play
I'm
in a
good,
private
thanks.
game with 2. Yeah, you have to have at least 2 to play private.
Yeah.
So, but it's
then
good.
but it still fills in with bots though.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. Yeah, we had
Just
2
like
bots
Left 4
with
Dead.
us. 2 bots with us yesterday. They did okay. They didn't fall down too
Probably
much.
did better than I would have done.
Well, they will follow you. Like if you get off track, because you can get separated. Like Kelly, like he was saying, likes to charge forward, so he'd leave us behind sometimes because he's there tearing things up.
You're gonna
And
get to the end, man.
yeah, the bots actually come back to me like, "Are you okay?" It's like, yeah, I'm just trying. I can't catch him. He's too fast.
The
He's
thing I
killing
like it,
people.
well, it doesn't have radar. You can see little images of your
Yeah.
teammates on the map,
You
right?
lost
They'll
your
show up as like
teammates, though.
little X-ray images of them. So
Yeah.
you see like a little
See,
skeleton.
I was
running
thinking
around.
about that. We brought that up before. Like, of all the advances in technology, we've got cell phones that have all this cool stuff on it. We've got AI. We've got all these things. Why don't we have a radar? You know how
Well, you're-
handy that would be. You know,
Yeah.
like you could tag people. Like if this person shows up, if my radar warn me. So I
I'm
can
sure it
get away.
exists. I'm sure it exists, but we just don't know about it.
Yeah. That
But-
would be the best, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, your auspex, they do kind of explain in a way that the auspex, you all have an auspex and you get to see each other so that the auspex will pick up. But since you're in a hive, so the hive kind of blocks signals for detection of anything else. It's a well done game. The sound is great. Like I was mentioning to Kelly last night, the Tox Flamer, they put out a hideous amount of fire. This giant gout of flame that just incinerates everything. But before they fire, they have to light their Tox Flamer, and it sounds like a gas oven. And I was like, "What's that clicking?" All of a sudden, a swash of green fire just incinerates me. It's like, oh, it's a Tox Flamer.
I knew what it was. That's why I was in the elevator waiting.
I
for
had
it
no
to go
idea.
up.
I was like, "Oh, what's that clicking?" Because normally there's so much shooting you can't hear like that small sound, but it was quiet, and he just kind of snuck up, and I hear click, 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 woof, wash of flame. Like, oh,
Okay, I
Help
know what
me.
a wash is. I didn't know what a swash was.
swash,
What the hell is
swash.
a swash.
It's chaos related.
It is. It's a chaotic wash of flame.
But what's
yeah,
the
you
news?
guys-
What's the news on Space
Go ahead.
Marine 2 though? Because that's now been delayed. Does anybody
Late
It's
have
never
any-
24.
coming out ever.
No, late 24. They didn't
late
like the way.
24?
Yeah,
That's like a year
second
from
half.
now.
Yeah, second half. They didn't like the way they put it in a public beta, and I guess they felt it wasn't ready. I signed up for the public beta, but I didn't get into it. But I guess they felt it wasn't ready, and they'd rather release a great game than push it out too
A good
fast
game?
and then have everyone complain.
So they spent all that time creating something that they thought was a great game and found out it wasn't. I mean,
No,
it boggles
everything-
the mind, right?
No.
That you put that out, and then you're like, this sucks.
Well, you
Let's,
know-
Well, I feel
wait
the
a
same way
year."
about
This
movies.
sucks.
Like
This
these
gets
guys
to-
spent a year or two making a movie, right?
Yeah.
Because it takes
Yeah.
a long time. And at some point, like, does everybody know going in this is going to be okay? Whatever, it's a movie, or do people know like going in thinking this is going to be, the next Star Wars, the next Matrix, whatever? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, at some point, watching the dailies on a movie, or when you're seeing the updates on the game, didn't somebody say, "Are we hoping this works?" Or, is there a
Well, the
plot?
Marvels came out, so I mean that obviously that logic doesn't.
I
hold
saw the
true.
Marvels. It was better than I expected.
That's not saying a lot. It's like
No,
saying
it was. Shut up, Rich. You haven't seen the movie. You don't get to talk about it.
that's not my point. It's better than I expected could mean anything.
And the best thing about it is, of course, Ms. Marvel. Like that actress,
Okay.
she's great. She's the funniest. She was the best thing about that whole movie. It was fine. Again, I think Marvel on top, post
Fanboy.
end game, right? Everything has just been mid, right? And again, was it great? Absolutely not. The main bad guy was awful. But again, Ms. Marvel, I thought she was great. I like that
Hey,
actress, and I like
let
her
me ask you something,
enthusiasm
Mark.
for the role.
Was it because I was thinking it was going to be like
It's Captain
a Marvel
Marvel.
version of Freaky Friday?
Mm.
Is that accurate?
No, they do end up like switching physical place when they end up using their powers, and they have like a training montage where they're like, okay, well, we're entangled, we got to figure this out, and so they have like this training montage where they can figure it out and actually use it to their advantage. If anything, I thought that went a little quick, like to overcome that thing was like a little easier. It was just a quick little montage, and now you're fighting like a well-oiled team, kind of thing. But it was fine. It was a good time.
Hmm. All right. Well, that actually dovetailed into
Yes,
what
I know, Rich. You hate everything Marvel. If Disney had
No.
anything to do with it, it's the
No.
worst thing in the world, and you
No,
can't stand it.
absolutely not. No, absolutely
that
not.
way.
Awful. Ah,
Absolutely not. That
got
movie,
girls
yeah.
in it.
No. Sometimes you say the most idiotic stuff.
Pretty much all.
But no, that movie in particular, I saw the first one. It was awful, and they just didn't have a lot to build on for the second one.
It gives them a
First
blank
one,
slate.
You mean which one?
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel and Marvels
Captain
are
Marvel. Okay. Well, it
yeah,
said
yeah.
the Marvels. I didn't know
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
meant.
No,
like Miss
that's a
Marvel or
problem right
Captain
there.
Marvel.
That's a problem right there.
Well, that honestly, that's not the movie's fault. That was a Marvel problem from the comics. There's just too many.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah,
I
Monica Rambeau, completely
love
forgettable. Don't really like her character. Like,
Who's that?
The
Monica
Photon.
Rambeau.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you.
Whatever her
Yeah.
name is, because they never really
Yeah.
defined it apparently.
Yeah, they never gave her a name. There was like this cute little bit where Ms. Marvel's trying to like give her a name, and she's like, I don't need a name, and she keeps coming up with these, dumb names.
The thing like
that
I can't,
character, forgettable.
well, as we've discussed, the thing I can't forgive them for is what they did to Sam Jackson's character, to Nick Fury. The utter destruction of Nick Fury from Winter Soldier to here is just unforgivable. It really is. It's terrible. He was so good in Winter Soldier, and just what and it's not Samuel Jackson, it's the character. He can only work with what they give him, and what they've given him is just the worst version of that character possible.
No, he's Samuel L. Jackson. He can march into the writer's room and start making demands.
He
He
could
should do that right now.
He
He
definitely
With
could.
his purple saber.
Yeah, he could
Yeah, he
say
definitely
there's
could.
he'd just talk about snakes on a plane. But no, I actually love Marvel. I'm so heartbroken over what they've done to it. That's the thing.
You know what, Kelly? Let's get into your thing, because I was about to get into a whole diatribe about how Lethal Weapon has not held up.
That's a harsh segue.
Save that for its own episode. A special 2-hour episode of Speak Nerd Now.
Movies Sean used to like that now he thinks suck.
Number one, Highlander.
But it
Driving
was
Miss
awful.
Daisy.
It is awful, by the way.
It has not held up.
No.
Well, that's why they're doing a new one with Henry Cavill.
What's that? Oh no, I was still
Highlander.
talking about Lethal Weapon.
Oh, I was talking about Highlander. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Yes. So Kelly, you had a thing about stupidity, yes?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was after a particularly stressful day. I think I responded to you guys in the email about what topics should we discuss, and I think I angrily posted something about the ideas are people getting dumber? Is stupidity increasing, or is it me? And the thing is, I don't know where I land on it, to be quite honest, because I think there is me a bit becoming a bit more
Cynical.
intolerant of people making goofy mistakes, creating problems in the idea that they're moving the agenda forward. But I don't know. I mean, you look around, I think the question's valid. Are people actually getting a bit dumber? I mean, if we look at where people are taking in information, and this is kind of a diatribe about the internet and social media and things like that, where people get their information, and the fact that so much of it is untrustworthy at this point, and of weird origin that, where do we stand as a people? I don't know. I think people are getting a little dumber and a little less inclined to do meaningful research and thought on what they're doing before they do it, that it causes problems.
I will offer a counterpoint then.
Yeah,
Though it's not to say that people aren't getting dumber. I'm not gonna actually. I don't know how I would argue that, but I would argue perhaps I would offer that much like the I would say much like the state of I would say cruelty or violence or any of the more the darker side of humanity. I don't think it's gotten more prevalent. I just think it's become perhaps a bit more easy to feel the echoes of it because of technology. I think humanity has always been replete with apathy,
sure.
and I see that's the thing. You talk about stupidity, and I think what do we really what it comes down to for me is what do you mean by that? And most of the time, if I honestly think about that, I think you could boil it down to apathy about a given subject, resulting in what would look like stupidity. Now, you could argue that it's stupidity because if you had honestly researched a thing or tried to do a thing correctly or something like that, you may not have made whatever mistake it is or decision you made or whatever that way. But I think maybe it might be more apathy that results in that. But I don't know. I don't know. But I definitely think that you feel the effects of it much more readily now because technology makes it easier, makes everything quicker. So you hear about it, see it, and feel it much more
Yeah,
readily than
I
you
mean,
would
but that's
have.
kind of the thing. I mean, people see something, they hear it, and then they react on that thing. And to your point, that they don't research it, they don't try to understand. And I mean, there's a lot going on in the world now, though, where this really can come into play. And I don't want to get into any of those particular issues in this particular forum.
Right.
Mm.
Well, that's what I was thinking about. When you scroll through social media, news headlines, whatever, so much of this is designed for clickbait, eyeballs, rage clicks, whatever you want to call it. It's
Right.
like, here's a thing that happened. You should be upset about this. And I will literally look at headlines and go, well, clearly they want me to be upset about a thing or to have this opinion based on how this is written. Right. And like that happens. And I have a few examples that I can think of off the top of my head that I won't go into because Kelly doesn't want to get, bogged down into specific topics or whatever. Um, and I think that comes down to, man, there's a lot going on in life, and we don't have time to dig into the details of every little thing that comes across our newsfeed, right? So, like Sean was saying with apathy, I don't have time to look into it, but you got to have that discernment. Like, you have to. And so, most people, I think, don't. And they believe everything, or they believe most of, or they believe the things that fit with their current worldview that come across their news feed. And
Yeah.
politics is the perfect example, right? When you're gearing up for an election, they're like, my opponent wants to, kill and eat your baby and vote for me because I'm not going to do that, and they're like, what? He wants to kill and eat babies. I don't want to vote for that. Right. And so, but then when you go look at the actual, and it's hard to do this without some examples, but
No, go
yeah,
ahead.
you
Throw
know
us
what
in.
I
Yeah.
mean? Well, Vivek Ramaswamy, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, he
Hmm.
put out a thing the other day. He's like, listen, man, kids are dumb and we should make US voters kind of pass the same laws on how government, or pass the same tests on how government works that we make immigrants who are coming to America legally and get past the immigration test, right? They have to understand what the three
Hmm.
branches of government are and checks and balances and these kind of things. We don't require that of current voters. And so he said something like, hey, we should, have people do this. Maybe that means raising the voting age. Maybe that means whatever, but there's got to be some education in, like, you're voting for how to run this country. Maybe you should know a thing or two about how the country works, right? And so, of course, that is seized upon by people who are like, oh my gosh, he wants to raise the voting age and he wants to do this and he wants to. And I'm like, well, when you listen to his answer is like, there's a lot of uneducated voters, right? There's a lot of low information voters. And if your party or your platform or your bill is only going to move forward based on the uneducated voter falling for what you're trying to, like, that's not a recipe for a prosperous and free country. That's a recipe for disaster. But it's, again, that's a nuanced thing. Like, okay, well, how do we foster this knowledge? How do we, require the knowledge? Should we even do that?
Yeah.
Is a valid question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I get that, but the four of us can have this conversation and talk about it. I feel like a lot of other people are like, oh, he wants to do that, he's bad, and then they never look at the topic again because of this very superficial, take on it, right?
Right, and I think that's 2 points, Sean. I think you're right. As I've interpreted what you said, was that, is it really that ignorance is increasing, or is it just that it's more readily seen now? Because before social media, it was all there. And the reason I think this is, I was watching something and they were replaying an old speech at one of the party conventions, prior to the U.S. election, and what the candidate was talking about. I just sat back and I closed my eyes. And I was listening to it, and I thought to myself, this speech could be taken and put into modern day, and all the points they talk about were still the same, And I thought, has humanity really even moved off the X? And is the biggest change over the last several decades just the advent of the speed with which we disseminate, bad information? And Mark, that gets to your point, which is the issue of rage clicks and clickbait. And let me just give you your 5-minute thing, because not even 5 minutes. Let me give you something that's, 10, 15 seconds on a topic. And then suddenly now know everything about that topic.
I have a thought. I have a thought on this. So I don't think people are getting more ignorant. I think they're just as ignorant as they have been for about the last 5,000 years.
Right.
I think your point about it being more exposed is definitely true. The internet allows people that used to just be in the basement in their little corner now to have a worldwide vocal platform, where they can intermix with other people in their basements, and they come out of the shadows, come like cockroaches. But I think what it is, it's twofold. I don't think it's that ignorance is increasing. I think that tolerance has increased to an unhealthy point, and shame is no longer allowed. So tolerance of people's idiocy is now, it's become so, there's such a high level of it. It's just like what Sean was talking about with the movies. Violence, things that used to be violent 50, 60 years ago that would never be seen on the movie screen.
Sure.
You have things like Saw now, which is torture porn, where people are getting mangled in the most horrific ways. And even, up to the point where children are seeing this from a very young age. So there's a tolerance now of opinions, which in the past would have been called out and shamed. And like you were talking about Vivek Ramaswamy, actually, that's something I think he's really good at, is he calls up people on their ignorance. And I don't agree with his, citizenship test, but I do agree with the fact that he calls people on their ignorance and shames them for it. It's like, no, that's a dumb opinion. Why would you even come up with that? And that's the sort of thing that has increased. It's not that the ignorance is increased, it's the tolerance of it is increased, and the willingness or the ability, because then you get canceled if you shame somebody. Shame should always be the first thing that people go to before violence, before anything else. Shame should be the first remedy for a stupid opinion. Is you should shame somebody.
Don't forget ridicule. I would
time.
definitely put ridicule in there as well.
Ridicule, shame, yeah, basically the same thing, I assume.
But ridicule is funner.
Mark. Well, okay, thank you. See, Mark's using it right now. There you go. So you see, this is what I'm saying. Mark's a master of this. All right, but it's very much, it's true. I mean, but he tries to shame you into believing what he says, even when it's garbage. So, you know.
Well, here's the
But-
deal: is I don't
but
know
I
if
think
I
that's
agree
what
with
it
that
is.
point. I don't know if I agree with
Okay.
that point, Rich, because and
Okay.
you know, respectfully agree to
Go
disagree.
ahead. No, please.
I don't know that shame
No,
is
Kelly, try some
necessarily
ridicule.
all right.
Call it what it is. Call it
right.
stupid.
Rich, you
No, go ahead.
ignorant bitch.
I want to hear how you think. I actually do. This is something I think
No.
about a lot. So I do want to hear how you think that I'm off base on it. I don't. You might be right that ignorance has increased, that people have gotten dumber.
No,
but
no,
I
no,
don't
not
think so.
that
Yeah.
point. Not that point.
Oh, okay.
Well, two things. I
Go
think if you and Sean are right about, you know, ignorance has kind of always been a thing and it's kind of stayed at this particular level, you know, then I'm clearly landing in my head on the idea that maybe I'm just getting older and this is all starting to bug me more.
That's okay.
And right, but I mean, look, we're all at that point where you're starting to deal with the aging process and you're like,
Yeah.
is this really how this goes? But on the issue of shaming somebody, I don't know that I agree that shaming is an effective tool to get somebody to
Oh, I didn't say it was
enlighten
effective.
themselves.
I said it was the first. There's other tools after it that are increasing levels of force.
Well, actually, let me jump in here really quick on the shame
Go
thing.
ahead. Go ahead.
There's a difference between me trying to shame Rich for his ridiculous opinion and society looking down.
Good
And I'm going to use an example of like single motherhood, right?
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, if a high school girl got pregnant, it was kind of like a big deal. It was not normal. It was, you know, like when we were in high school, like it happened, but it was not common, right? Going back into the 60s and the 50s, oh my gosh, they'd send you away to some other place to have the baby, and it was this
Convent.
family shame that would try to be covered up, or they would, you know, do so. Society has become much more accepting of single
Tolerance.
motherhood,
Yeah.
to the point that the pendulum has swung to, oh, you're so brave, you're such an awesome person doing that by yourself, and these, you know, which is
Lauded.
I think, yeah, lauded, but I think it's harmful to kind
Yeah.
of families and society, and you know, that's a broader discussion. But definitely we can see the shame component of going outside the societal norms of get married and have children.
Mm-hmm.
Is a factor that has weakened over time, which is different than personal shame, like your opinion is dumb and I'm going to laugh at you. So I guess I would say I'd broaden that shame thing, like society trying to control behavior or point, or, you know, steer behaviors toward one thing or away from another thing, uses shame. I'm going to say effectively. The jury's out on, you know, kind of what we should or shouldn't be doing as far as all of that goes. But I think we can look at the data on single motherhood and broken families, and I use the term broken, but, you know, non-mother, father, child, nuclear families has not been good for it has not been good for society or those families. And there's plenty of data to back that up. So
I'm gonna take I'm gonna talk about this without my own personal beliefs on any of this stuff, right? Just separate myself from it entirely and look at it and try to look at it objectively, right?
Which is the first step in this. Most people can't do that.
Well,
everything is about their opinion or their situation or and they cannot step outside of that. That is part of what I think the problem with this.
Well, that was going to be
like
part
it's
of my
possible
point. That was going to be part of my point, is that one of the things that I hear a lot when people get into arguments, as a matter of fact, I heard this just the other day, when you propose to someone that they maybe step up and be the bigger person, and even if you're not wrong, you put that olive branch out there and let somebody know, hey, it's all right, I'm not upset, you know, let's talk about this, that kind of thing, without trying to prove you're right? You know, without doing that first, just putting the olive branch out to smooth the field a bit and allow things to perhaps progress a little because the other person can't do it, right? And the response that I would usually get, and to be honest with everybody, let's be upfront, how many of us have done the same thing, right? why should I have to? Or I shouldn't have to, right? Because you feel you're right. You feel like I shouldn't have to do that. And so it's a form, I think, of not just righteous indignation, but also a bit of apathy, perhaps a strong bit of apathy, as we were talking about, with the lack of willingness to set aside your emotional desire to be able to gain something a little more peaceful, a little more um, workable, right? And it seems like a small thing in an argument like that, but you can see very quickly how something like that would blossom into an entire movement or an entire belief system or a war or any of those things, how quickly that would take place. And the insidious part about it is it can be used for good, sure, in certain circumstances, but more often than not, it's going to be used or abused to do something that's not. And it doesn't matter who you are. And I've noticed this as well. It does not matter who you are, does not matter your level of intelligence, doesn't matter the amount of wisdom you have. All of us, all of us are subject to the same thing. And it leads you to making what would be considered those apathetic and stupid decisions that have long lasting repercussions. And I don't think humanity has ever been free of that. I don't think that we ever will be free of that. And so I don't know how you would address it. But I don't think, like we were talking about before, I don't think it's gotten more so. I think it's become easier to express. So if I want to do this across countries or across the world or to however many people at once that I, want to do it with, I can do that. I can do that. I can express that or postulate it or, have the echoes of it flow out into society. And it's so much easier to get that resonance now than it ever has been before. The evils, the, stupidities, the goods, and all those things just haven't had the ability to echo as quickly as they have now. And because we see it, and to use us as an example again, we're doing a podcast. The only reason we're doing that is because we've seen other people do it. And we thought, oh, that'd be cool. Let's do that. We're old friends. It'd be kind of cool to get together once a week and just jabberjaw and all that. And maybe it'd be interesting, maybe not. But at least we're doing. The only reason we thought of it was because we had seen other people do it. So, it's just a human condition. And
Sure.
I just think that's really how it is, and I don't know
Yeah.
how you address it or if you're even supposed to.
Well, see,
Um,
I think to that end, Sean,
I don't know if I explained that well, by the way,
no,
but
I mean, I agree with your point is that, um, I think the only way to address it is one person at a time. I mean, each person has to address it in their own way. I think as we sit here today and look at the world, I think people are decidedly intolerant and more so. I think that everybody retreats into their ideological echo chambers to only listen to themselves speak and if you agree with me, then I'll be your friend on friend face. And we'll share those
Insta
messages.
face.
But I think it has to be on an individual level. See, for me, I mean, it goes back to the idea. I mean, to return to the issue of shame. I don't shame anybody for your belief. I might have questions about why you believe what you believe, and I'll engage you in a conversation to, explain to me why you believe this thing that you believe. Um, and I may have additional questions as I go along, but I think my point is, um, the only thing I can do is just be me and exhibit what I think would be a more effective path forward. Like I say,
sure, being the good example, right?
yeah,
Or trying to be.
yeah, and then
But
I want
even
to avoid that label a bit because I don't know if I'm a
no,
good
I
example.
understand. I understand, but I'm talking in colloquialisms, if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
will.
yeah,
But even at that, even using that, you and Kelly, you and I grew up in a home that took care of many who
yeah,
were in rough situations, right?
yeah.
Some, a very few, let's be honest about this too, a very few were able to overcome and
Sure.
become a more I don't want to use the wrong word, a happier, let's say happy, there we go. A more
They were
peaceful,
definitely the
happier
minority.
state. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely, right? The majority of them just couldn't get over those demons, right? Couldn't get over those hurdles to reach that other side. But there
for sure.
were a couple. By the way, got a call from Mike just the other day, and he was, saying hello and how he's doing and stuff like that.
Cool.
Um, who is an example, in my mind, of someone who is. See, that's why I don't know how you would define the stupid part too. So many people would call him something cruel like that,
Yeah,
you know. But I'll tell you what, that guy has more insight and more grace in him than 99% of humanity,
yeah,
you know. And where does that come from? Because you know what he went through and
yeah.
what defines the difference between the two. And so many of the others who had gifts that people would think, oh, well, they should be able to do so much better in life. And yet they couldn't, right?
But see,
So how do you,
that's where the
that's why I just don't think you could get rid of it or lessen it in the future, because
that's
how
where the
would you do that?
tolerance effort comes in a bit, right? Because I think there's I think someone can attempt to make a demarcation between um, stupid, ignorant, and other things, right? And again, not putting Mike in any of those categories, but there are people who should know better, who have the ability to know better, and they're deliberately obtuse, right? And that deliberate obtuseness um, contributes to a problem. I think in your actions, you have to ask yourself, am I contributing to a furtherance of a problem, or am I doing something that's expansive and uplifting?
Well, see,
Um,
that's,
Oh, I think most people aren't
to
that
that point,
self-aware.
but to that
right. Well,
point,
yeah,
I remember specific. This is one of the things, and you just prompted this in my head with that. I remember Mike. Um, Mike ended up running afoul of the. I think it was the Metro Transit. I can't forget which it was, or I can't remember which it was. Metro Transit or one of, I don't know, one of the departments, right? Something about fares and all that. And Mike didn't know how to work that stuff, and he was trying to get to work, where
yeah,
he works and all that. And they ended up arresting him and processing him, and they were going to send him to court and all this stuff. And Mike finally told me about it because he didn't want to bother me with it, right? And so he finally told me about it. And I remember calling them and saying to them, "Hey, can we take care of this, please? I'll pay whatever fine it is. I'll do all that and everything." The person I was talking to was so apathetic, so don't care, you
yeah,
know. And I had to beg them and say, he works for the Chimes. Come on, man. You've seen the guy, you've met him. Do you think this was an evil act? Come on. Let me, just get this done with. And you would think that someone who had some form of, and this is somebody who's supposed to be on the good side, right? You would think someone in that position would have more, or you would hope they would have more compassion, more, as Mark was saying, more tolerance and, that sort of thing too. And yet it's absolutely absent, you know?
yeah. Well, no, I mean
And
the way the world's set up. I mean, it echoes more the 40K administratum.
yes, much more.
Some random bureaucratic thing. It's like the movie Brazil. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and it
Not as funny.
not nearly as funny or interesting. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know where I end up on this, other than I guess the
But see,
world is
that's
as
my
it's always
question would
been.
be, my question would be to you, because I feel like mankind cannot solve its own problems that way. My whole thing about this. I've said it many times. If mankind's involved in it, it ain't going to get solved. It's just going to, get progressively worse by degrees until eventually we come to whatever end we are. Or if you're like me, religious and you believe something different, but it's not man that's going to be solving his own problems, because we never have. And I don't see that changing at any point, right? I just don't see how mankind's going to be able to do that. You can do it on an individual basis and try to make yourself different. And there are examples of people who very rarely, just like the kids that were in that program, very, very small minority of people that we can, I think each of us agree, from various societies and cultures and stuff, who have been the exception. But by and large, Mankind does not do that. Mankind is very, very destructive in many different aspects. I just don't see that changing. Do you?
No, but I think I always hope for it.
No, I
I do
understand the hope
actually.
part.
I'm a glass half full kind of
I'm
guy.
saying extract yourself from it
Sure.
and look at it objectively, not
And I'm
your
not
No,
glass half
wants,
full.
I
not your
am.
wants.
Like when you look objectively at worldwide poverty numbers, worldwide life expectancy, all of those things are getting better. Right? It's very common for everybody to go, "Oh, the world's getting worse." It really isn't. There's more people have been lifted out of poverty in the last 100 years than in all of human history. Right?
Uh,
The lifespan is increasing. I don't lay that at government at all. You know what I mean? Like it is the advance of human technology, and we're able to feed more people on less land. We're able to do a lot of things as I think the technology increases. Government more often than not is just in the way, right? Like we have plenty of food to feed the entire world. The issue is usually political when it comes to people starving, not the availability of food. It's a distribution, and government's getting in the way of that distribution. So like I think humanity is slowly progressing, and getting better on a lot of fronts. At the same time, we do see a lot of things that are not good and awful. But like, let's look at the crime rate. Everybody's like, "Oh, crime's awful." No, crime's actually been going down steadily since the '90s. We hear more about it because we have social media and things like that, and all the most salacious things end up right in front of us on the news, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, they, I continue to be a glass half full kind of person looking at the advance of human society
well, let me offer
versus
a
not.
counter to that because I've heard a lot about, oh, things are great right now. What point in history would you want to exist where it would be any better than it is right now, right? And no one's going to be able to look at that and say, well, I'd rather be in the 1860s or, the 1700s or any of that because you get a splinter and, well, that's it, right?
Right.
However, I would put to you narcissism is at an all-time high. Apathy and tribalism is at an all-time high. Intolerance and all those things that are not convenience based are at an all-time high. I would say that the ease of being able to feed yourself, the ease of being able to get medicine and things like that, those are technology based. And once you figure a way of doing something in an easier fashion, a simpler fashion, we can, and do use those sorts of things when it's a convenience to us. When it's not a convenience to us, we're not so good at it. Even if it's something for the long term, well, in 50 years, 100 years, this is going to be great and all that stuff. We don't generally do that sort of thing. And we're very insular and very intolerant of each other that way. Very, very low on understanding and care. The apathy comes in. And so that would be my argument towards that is that it's not actually that humanity is changing its personal state. Humanity has been changing its state of convenience more than anything else. And I would agree with you. I would say yes, absolutely. The state of convenience has improved, has gotten so much better. And I wouldn't want to live in another time because hell, abscess tooth and, all these different things you can run into in life that can now be taken care of, polio and all that. You can take care of all those things, but mankind is still very much the same. And we've also gotten better at the worst parts of ourselves and what we do. We've gotten very good at those things too, or better, at those things too, compared to what we were able to do. And so I don't mean to sound like a glass half empty kind of guy. I don't know if that's what I
And
would
yet
even
you're so
describe
good at
myself
it.
as. But because I think I'm actually, look, I think I'm actually a pretty good friend. I think I'm very,
Okay.
I try to, back my friends a lot and help them out whenever they're in need and that sort of thing. I try to be that kind of person, I think. Um, so it's not like, well, screw that. I'm just gonna, the world's done. I'm just gonna go in for what I can get or any of that. I do hope, like Kelly was saying, I do hope that there's better people on the horizon and that sort of thing. But if I take myself away from it and objectively look at humanity, though technology is going up and the convenience part is going up, I don't see a change in humanity itself. I see, as a matter of fact, like I was saying, that echo chamber effect
Yeah.
that's gotten more and more.
I would just say this. Number one, I'm not glass half full or half empty. I'm wondering who left half a glass of water on my table. Um, I
I was being tolerant of Mark's analogy.
I know you're very tolerant of Mark.
His stupid
Have to be.
analogy.
And I think at the end of the day, I think I have to conclude on the idea that humanity, like you say, Sean, is kind of remaining generally the same, right? Um, Year over year. I think people go to extremes. I don't agree with any of the extremes of a splinter or an abscess tooth could kill you in the 1860s. Let's all deal with the simple fact of the smell of the 1860s as being prohibitive to go back.
Things have improved. Yes.
Yeah, clothing and
Well, since
ventilation
the
and
invention
bathing
of
and
air conditioning, yes.
sewage.
Yeah.
Look, I like
Washing
working in a
machines.
factory. I like working in a factory from age 3 onward.
But I think my hope here is that, I mean, in just considering the question of where humanity's at, I would hope that people get more tolerant. The solutions to today's problems do not exist in the extremes, in either direction. Um, I wish people would take a moment before reacting and ask themselves the simple question, why do I believe this thing that I believe? And honestly and objectively look into that. The list of things that I will say that I believe unequivocally is very small. I have opinions of things, and those change continuously as I take in more information and talk to people and learn more and things like that. And I think that's sort of the role that everybody needs to fit into, is sort of a curious, inquisitive thing. Ask questions, find out. The thing that you believe may not be the right thing. It may not even be a helpful thing. And it's incumbent upon everybody to look at that. That's my
But
opinion.
that's
Right.
the scary
And
part
and that
for a
brings
lot
no,
of
that
people.
brings up the point I wanted to make, Kelly, that like people we look at, oh, that was a dumb decision. You did a dumb thing. You thought a dumb thing. People make the best decision they can with the knowledge that they have.
Hmm.
Right. And so,
Mhm.
like, looking back in my own life, I've made dumb decisions. And you're like, man, what was I thinking? But that was the decision I thought was right at the time based on what I knew. Well, I know more now. And so looking back, I go, oh, man, that was just dumb. Why would I do that? Right. Whereas now I go, oh, okay, well, uh, I know more. I'm smarter. I have a better grasp of all the other intricate things that align with that decision, and so going back to, like, somebody made a dumb thing or somebody did, like, people are raised a certain way, people have certain political beliefs because of where they live or who their parents were or whatever. That doesn't make them you know dumb or ignorant or bad or evil. That's what they know. And, like, that makes sense. So I'm with you. I don't there's lots of people who disagree with me about certain topics. That doesn't make them dumb or doesn't make them evil. They're coming at it from a certain worldview that they have. And if you turtle up and protect that worldview and never open it to learning anything else, okay, now you're dumb.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, if you are open to learning more and questioning and having new information come in that will alter your view on a given topic or a given whatever, that's growth, right? and
Right.
and
And I mean,
so yeah.
even if we look at this group, I mean, the four of us, right? All four of us will have differing political opinions of something. We'll have different philosophical opinions of something. But here we are, all four of us talking, having a conversation. I mean, granted, Rich is wrong, and we all agree on that. But
All in favor?
we're all still friends. We can all still have the conversation. And what I see more and more today is that people can't do that, or people engage in, frankly, the deliberate obtuseness of just really having the argument to just argue. It adds no value. There's no
Well,
value in what's going on.
to your point, Kelly, this is the thing I've noticed. Because in well, I don't want to get into religious stuff at all, but I teach a class. Okay, once a month I teach a class up there, and I've noticed, because you talk about questioning what you believe in and stuff like that, even amongst what would otherwise be a homogenous group, right? Where you figure, okay, here's all the stuff you need, here's all the rules and stuff. Everybody should be believing the same thing. Doesn't work, brother. And if you hit somebody's trigger, oh, look out, right? It gets vicious. I mean, real quick, because they believe a thing. And as soon as you bring up a question about it, you're thinking innocent, like you guys are, innocently. Let me ponder this. What is this about? Well, why this? And that kind of thing. You're trying to find some deeper meaning or possibilities and all, but it scares the hell out of somebody else because they predicated their entire life on, this aspect. And now they are on the warpath. And I've wondered about that because I was actually accused one time of being too analytical. You're too analytical. You're looking at everything as like, what did she say? She said, I was looking at everything like a scientist or something. I forget it. It was something like that.
Right.
And I was thinking to myself, yeah, in a way, yeah, sure. As a matter of fact, I even had stuff cited where we were encouraged to do so, right? Doesn't make a difference, right? And doesn't make any difference. Or the self-confidence thing we talked about.
Sure.
Had a great conversation ourselves about that stuff right here, regardless of, where you fell on it. Didn't happen at all that way with, this particular person, there. No, not at all. Can't have that. Suddenly it's, false teachings and all this sorts of things, right? Even when you cite various stuff. Can't accept it. And I was wondering, well, why? Why is that? Not the acceptance of the idea being true, but the desire to even explore and find out. Because you're encouraged to find things out, to seek knowledge and make yourself better. But there's so many who don't. They retreat in, they turtle in, as you said, and try to exclude all that. Well, why, right? And I've thought about this, is that the fear that the foundation you have built your life on is now being attacked and about ready to crumble causes this violent response, right? Born of fear. Emotion doesn't care about logic, and logic doesn't care about emotion, but you need both, right? Emotion is your motivation to do a thing, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. Emotion just tells you, you want this or you don't want this. Stop it or get it, right? And then the logical side is how to do a thing, but it doesn't motivate you to do it. Well, this is how you get a thing. This is how you stop a thing. But you may not care about it or want it or don't want it or whatever, like a volcano. How does a volcano work, right? You can figure that out, but it doesn't really give you any motivation for making a volcano or stopping it.
Right.
It's just
I think you have to pour the baking soda in at some point.
Well, I have a good friend.
The hot fudge. Yes.
Yeah.
I have a good friend who I consider a mentor who makes that exact point, Sean, about
Mark?
emotion logic. No, it's not Mark. He is a good friend, but he's not the one who made this point. This is something that Mark would never say.
A tolerant, half full kind of a friend? Is that what?
No. Regarding emotion and logic. So
Wise beyond his years, you might
world's
say.
okayest friend?
okay. Correct. World's okayest friend.
Would you describe him as I?
Yeah. Well, sometimes he's okay.
I mean,
Sometimes
he's on the
not.
podcast.
Yeah.
Not okay, not bad, just I.
No, seriously though, to get to the point,
Yes,
it's my buddy Justin Garcia. He makes this point about emotion and logic, that your life is like a bowl of soup or like a pot of soup. The logic should be the base, the stock of your soup. The emotion is the spice. It's the spice of life. Too much spice ruins the soup. And that's the way it is with a lot of people, is too much emotion ruins the soup of their life. They're so emotional. Their cup is so overflowing with emotion. It's like throwing an entire box of Morton salt into the soup. The whole thing is spoiled.
Yeah.
And
Having-
I'd add, And
Yeah.
I would add real quick on that, just on that point right there.
Mhm. Go ahead.
Most when you're making that recipe, to use this analogy further,
Mhm.
when you first start making the soup, you're not using the water first. You're using the spices first. That's how human beings grow. We grow with these emotional scars or memories or desires from
Yeah.
when we're young, and then build ideally the stuff on top. So we start with the emotional stuff first,
Emotion's
and spend the
inherent.
rest of
Yeah.
our life trying to get the balance right.
Yeah.
You know?
Emotion's inherent. Logic is a learned system, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Logic
the
is
way you
wrong.
were making the point, Sean, it sounded like emotion and logic were equal. And I was sitting here thinking, like, Rich, I know, but
Yeah.
it came across that a little bit. I know that's not what you meant, but then when
Yeah.
Rich said, I was sitting here thinking like there should be way more logic and way less emotion. And I'll
Yeah,
give
more-
you another example.
more base.
Like all of us here are also gun nerds, right? I'm a Glock fan, and I know
No.
Sean is an HK fan, and Rich can't help but be emotional about his HK and oh, Glock's terrible, whatever. Shut up. But this is my
Not
point.
true.
This is one of
Not
those things.
true.
Like, I don't care. I have a pistol that works. There's a lot of pistols that work. I am not emotionally invested in Glocks or HKs or SIGs or whatever. But how many people on the internet, that's like, man, they got the sticker on the back of their truck. Like they've got the polo shirt or the t-shirt that has the company logo on it. Like they're emotionally invested in a piece of hardware that they bought that defines some of their personality. And they'll get in verbal arguments about which is better, which is worse. And and it's something is, I would trust my life to either one of those and have, if that makes sense. Right. But I don't care about Glock. Does it work? Yep. Would I use it to trust my life for it? Yep. And I do. Would I trade it in right now for an HK? Absolutely. For a SIG or an
You'd be
M&P?
better served to do so.
Absolutely.
Not for a SIG
High
right
point?
now. Not
High
right
point?
now.
Hell no. Right?
Not for a SIG right now.
My point is, how many people get obsessed about a piece of hardware? And let's take it out to cars, right? Toyota guys and Ford guys and Chevy guy. Like there's people that swear by their brand of car and they're invested in that, and they, and to whatever level that they want. I'm not here to judge people's, choice. What I'm saying is people make that choice of a thing and they defend it emotionally. Right.
Right.
And so when you're talking about teaching this lesson, that person is defending their position emotionally because you came in and said HK is better than Glock. Whoa, we can't have that. We got to stop that.
Right. You said the thing that threatens
Bud Light versus Miller Lite or whatever. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah. You say the thing. Well, yeah. I mean, to just repeat what you're saying. I mean, essentially, if you believe X and somebody comes in and questions X, suddenly your comfort level is threatened, right? This behavioral norm from the limbic part of your brain is now under threat, and so you react emotionally. But that's where I think, and I had a therapist tell me once that the older people get, the more life-threatening the idea of change becomes, right? Because your entire life has been predicated upon this belief system that you're now questioning. And change is great as long as you're not the one that has to do it, right? But I think in my opinion of things, we all have to embrace the idea of change. We're all wrong about something and we're all right about something, and in some cases neither exists. You just have an opinion that really amounts to nothing.
Mark, do you want to push back against that you're wrong sometimes? Do you want to push back?
Oh, I thought that was a given. I thought he was talking about the three of you.
Clarify, make sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark's already owned up to the fact that he's made dumb decisions, and that's enough for me for now.
Yeah, I made some dumb decisions back when I was like 4.
Yeah, and that's all I needed out of this podcast.
They weren't wrong at the time.
Well, he's already wearing the best shirt for what
Yeah.
The
world's okayest decision maker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, no, I don't know. I think that's where it is at the end of the day. I still think tolerance, curiosity, listening to somebody else's point, and you don't have to listen to everybody's point. I mean, hell, if you don't have the energy to do it that day, don't do it. Just don't engage. But that's the other thing. I think people engage a lot when they probably shouldn't.
It's interesting you bring up that point that that you don't have the time to listen to everyone's opinion, and that goes back to, I think I've mentioned before, Harlan Ellison's idea that everyone's entitled to opinion is the current thinking, right? You're all entitled to your opinion, and his thinking many years ago. Harlan Ellison, great science fiction writer, real curmudgeon too.
He stole everything he ever did from Herbert.
Yes, from Dune.
Yeah,
but the fact is, he said that you're not entitled to an opinion; you're entitled to an informed opinion. Everything else is farts in the wind. And I think he's 100% dead on with that. It's like, yeah, you can have an opinion, but your opinion might not be worth listening to, because
he does sound like a curmudgeon.
He is. Oh, he's quite curmudgeonly. He's dead now, but he was a very smart guy.
Dodge that bullet.
Dodge the bullet there, yeah.
He's the ultimate curmudgeon now that he's
Oh,
dead.
so we're going to try to invite him on the podcast or something.
Disagree with
Well, I'm
that.
saying that
Serves
he's
him right.
become even more of a curmudgeon since he died. But that's the point. Is that I think you're correct. Is that not even just having the energy to listen to it. Some opinions aren't worth listening to, but the double-sided knife of that, the whole edge blade of that, is that if you don't listen to them, then that opinion eventually other people listen to it and it sneaks up on you. So you kind of are forced to listen to bad opinions. Otherwise, they take you by surprise, and suddenly a bad opinion is something that you should have pushed back against, but you didn't, because you didn't listen to it in the first place.
But see, asking people to then examine that idea, that bad idea, or that thought or philosophy, runs into a lot of problems. Because as we said, it's based on those emotions that they've already had ingrained. And emotions are tough to get over, man. They're really hard to get over and think about differently and, handle. It's just almost an impossible task, and is impossible for a lot of people, to the point where, to go back to our, upbringing there, Kelly, how many did we see actually make it to later life, out of their teens into their 20s, and how many actually just died before then because they couldn't get over those scars, those emotions that they had.
The personal demons take a lot to overcome, but and if I'll leave it there. It takes a lot to overcome.
It takes a lot. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's really
and
really
I
hard.
do like the way, I think it was you that made that point, Sean. Like, you're right. As humans, we do start out, it's all emotion, right? Kids are hungry, they want to cry about it, right? Oh, I want a thing, I'm gonna cry, you didn't give me this toy, whatever. Like, you're right, we spend the first 10 years of our lives ish, it's 30. Nothing but emotion. And we spend the first 53 years of our lives and it's nothing but emotion and not logic and thought.
Work in progress.
Like, wow, it's crazy.
Work in progress.
But I think that's a tricky element there, because I don't think emotion is a weakness. And I think a lot of the world thinks it is. I see it labeled as a weakness.
I don't mean to say it is, by the way, if that's how it came across. That's not what I meant. Not what I meant at all.
That's what I meant. Yes.
But I want to just put it out there that it's not a weakness. I think the issue is, and to use a modern term, can somebody be emotionally intelligent, right? Because logic has its place, and I hear a lot of people talk about how analytical they are, or I approach everything with logic. And the fact is that you can't make a single decision in life if you don't have any sort of connection with emotion. If you try to make a decision based purely on logic, you will be unable to do so, and this is scientific fact.
Don't take it the wrong way.
By the way, to make sure, because I want to reiterate it, just in case, because like I said, I don't know if I said it well when we were talking about it. The logic will tell you how to do a thing, but it won't give you the impetus to do it.
Right. I mean, in all honesty,
you have to have the emotion to even start the process.
But
then you want to make sure that you don't let emotion run away with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
That gives you
Overly emotional
determination,
to
but
a
it doesn't
problem.
give you. I'm sorry, what's that?
Overly emotional with whatever you're facing.
Yeah, to where the emotion crowds out the logic and it's just emotion. I think we can all agree that is generally not a good state.
Right. The two need to walk hand in hand. What my point.
Yeah. How many people without, because you have the strong emotion that you want your pain to go away, right? Your emotional pain, your psychological trauma to go away. How many people then, instead of using a logical pathway to do so that would make sense, take an emotional pathway and destroy themselves even further by, using various methods? I'm sure you can think of plenty, right?
Yeah.
But how many times does that happen? So I was just saying, emotion, you can't live without having both of those, the yin and yang, if you will. And you don't want to have one overcome the other, so that logic doesn't allow you to, so that logic doesn't make you lose sight of your goal, and so that emotion doesn't make you lose sight of the cost of achieving that goal.
Yeah, and using
Sorry.
well, in using my soup analogy, you can't, if you have a soup that's just base, it's tasteless. So the emotion's necessary for the flavor of life. It's the spice of life. It's taste of life. But you can't be overwhelming. I think that the base needs to be the majority of your life. If you want to use it as an analogy, the majority of your life should be based around the stock of the soup.
What kind of soup are we talking about?
Whatever soup is your favorite.
Like a hearty chowder, or are we just talking about?
I am partial to.
I've been curtailing my bent for making fun of both Mark and Rich with the block conversation and the soup conversation. I want you to know I've been curtailing that because I love you both. And I want to be tolerant of your
thank you
beliefs.
Well, I appreciate that, but the point being, we could get into a large debate about what soup is best at this point and tell each other who's wrong. I'm partial to pasta fagioli myself, but that's me. But yeah, I didn't mean to come across that your life should be nothing but logical. That's you might as well be a robot. That makes a 1-0 decision.
And we spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about movies, and when you think about music and plays and all of that, like all of those are like movies. I always said they're designed to elicit emotion, right? And listening to beautiful music is an emotional experience, not a logical experience, right? And so like bringing this back kind of full circle, yes, emotion is important and whatnot. So yeah, maybe I misspoke when I wanted it to be much more of the logic and less of the emotion. But if that was the case, how much appreciation would there be for all of the cool things that we talk about? A lot of that is very emotional.
I don't think you're wrong, though, Mark. I think that emotion is very powerful. Emotion is extremely powerful. It gets you to do a thing, right? Who was I telling the other day? It might have been, I don't know who it was. Might have been Helena or somebody. I was telling him, look, if women weren't around, men would have just invented pizza, couches, and video games, and that'd be about it. Maybe a bridge so we could get to each other.
Glorious.
Every now and then.
We'd still have guns. That'd be fun.
Yeah, we'd be able to
kill each other,
because it's fun.
Yeah.
But that's about it. That's all there would really be. Emotion is the instigator for invention and decision, anything that you do in life, anything. But it's extremely powerful because it causes you to expend energy. Logic is how you do it efficiently. So you want to hone that so that you're able to do it responsibly and without wasting anything, or as little as possible. I just don't know as we're very good at that. I just don't know as we're good at that, and I don't know if we're really.
Well, because I think, Sean, to that end, and I agree with you, I would say there's a large portion of humanity that's not taught how to deal with emotions. And so without having an ability to deal, without having a language to use, you resort to nothing but your emotional content.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just don't know how you address that, because you're dealing with a flawed instrument from the get-go.
Yeah.
And so that flawed instrument is just going to make more flawed instruments, especially because we don't control a large part of what determines how good that instrument is at doing that thing. I mean, a lot of it's out of our control, right? So I don't know I don't know if we're even supposed to solve that. I don't know. Maybe recognition is just enough. Maybe that's the best we can do, and just recognize that we're a mess.
I think there's ways to address it. I think this is where I'm a glass half full kind of person, to contradict my earlier statement about not being. But it requires a longer podcast to discuss it.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's
I
an
think that comes down to
excellent
emotional maturity. You know what I mean? Like the more immature
Yes.
you are, the more you're driven by your emotions, and the more mature you are, the more you're able to marry those up with logic and kind of make those things. And just like humans are on that emotional, path. Everyone's at the spot they're at, and some people are further along, and some people are further behind for their circumstances. Right? Go ahead, Rich.
I wasn't going to say anything. I had nothing to say.
Then I'll go ahead and
Okay.
start talking there.
Yeah.
Okay, because so I cut you off for nothing. I just
No, I'm so used to it, I didn't even notice.
Yeah. I would, I honestly, that's how I would define wisdom is emotional intelligence, the combination of the two,
Yeah.
being able to use it responsibly seems like that would be wisdom to me. It's very difficult to find a good definition for that, but that's always felt right, not just intelligence, because that can always go very, very wrong, but wisdom seems to be like a greater version of that. So a successful fusing of the emotion and the intelligence to know when to use it, how to use it, when to stop, that kind of thing. So
Who would have thought that Speak Nerd and Enter could be so
know.
deep and philosophical?
yeah. How do we achieve that in the context of the new 40K release?
let's
Because you
not
all
be-
listened to my
at
question.
the end of this conversation, let's
True.
not screw ourselves on talking about stupidity and not turn around and say everything we just talked about was probably very, very dumb.
Oh no. I just
No,
it's a matter of our usual, group of topics. This kind of strayed off into far territory, and of course, it was the favorite who pushed it forward. Well done, sir.
You're
Well
welcome.
done.
You're welcome. I would like to say though, if we bring this back to a nerd basis, is this type of deep philosophical thought is what helps a lot when you get into role-playing games and into gaming in general.
Yeah.
Understanding motivations of different characters and things like that requires this type of deep thought process. I mean, surely you can populate a game with big tough characters with swords and just say, okay, go fight things, but that's not a terribly interesting
Shadow.
game.
But it's
Games-
funny that
games
you
are-
bring. It's funny that you bring that up, and then you tell us in Dark Tide, I just charge forward and chop things up.
Hey man, it's what the game is designed to do. I
Right,
played
that
the
has
game.
its place.
That
I agree.
Kelly, that Kelly, you
I
should
just think
say
it's
is
funny.
an example of wisdom.
Yeah.
Because it is not. It's
Emotional
not your normal
intelligence,
way.
if you will.
And
That's
and
right.
if you will,
right,
if
it's
you know
not
how
your normal
if you know how I
behavior.
play every other game,
Yeah. Yeah.
then yeah,
Yeah.
some would claim that's
Yeah.
growth.
So
Well, no, like for real though. Like the 12-year-old is
for
in the
real.
D&D club at school, and so they play D&D, and he'll jump in the car when we pick him up, and is talking about like, oh, I was running this D&D game, and 12-year-old gamers are exactly what you expect 12-year-old gamers to be. They don't know the rules. They're doing all this crazy stuff, and he's like, I threw this thing at him just because I didn't want him to get the treasure, and so I threw this thing at him, and I'm just like, that would drive me nuts. I want to play a game that makes sense. I want to play a game that, like Kelly was saying, why are the bad guys doing what the bad guys are doing? Why is this NPC acting the way that they are? And, Munchkin Gaming had its place. We've all done the power gaming and the murder hoboing, and that's great. It's fun and it has its place, right? We did an epic level evil campaign just because we wanted to. Yes, I've been there. We've done that, but we've also done other ones that were a lot more character driven, like story driven. What are we doing? And I think at the end of the day, they're all fun, but being able to kind of play that game that is on a different level than some of our previous iterations is refreshing and very fun.
Well, look at the games that people laud as the best games, and what they always point to is the writing of the characters, the story of the characters, things like
Dune.
Yeah,
I
like
was
Dune.
just gonna
Yeah.
say, yeah.
But yeah, like all things
Some
spawn from it.
sand-based science fiction.
All things spawn from grains of sand.
I mean,
no.
if you think about it, your
The
spice
spice must flow into the soup.
Right.
Right. That's right. All things
At
into Dune.
At the apex where wisdom and where emotion and logic converge, that is where you find Frank.
Yes. And that is how you become the Kwisatz Haderach. That's how you do it. You go within and you find the Kwisatz Haderach at the apex of Herbert.
That's right.
Well done. See, we tie it all together, folks.
All together
Yeah.
Dune. And you'll
All
find him
falls
there
to Dune.
with a Glock.
You will. You will.
Obviously.
No sight
It's
on
such
the
a
front,
sandy
it's
environment,
all off.
obviously.
Yes. A
All
lot of
right.
abrasion.
Thank you, gentlemen. Once again, I think we've solved nothing.
Well, we
But I
at least
appreciate the
addressed.
All right, you're
we
going
addressed all
to
these
tune in
questions.
next time to see if we make any forward progress on solving the world's problems.
Done and done.
Why do we need to solve anything when we have Dune?
That's right. It's all been solved. We're just
It's all been solved already.
We're just rediscovering why we have to ride the sandworm.
That's
We all
why-
just have to drink the water of
That's right.
life.
Ramaswamy was wrong. I mean, he should have just proposed everybody read Dune.
That's
He
right.
should.
Yeah.
He
It's
should.
true. That would make for a very informed electorate.
I bet you if you ask him, he would agree.
I
We'll have to
wouldn't.
see if we can push that forward.
You know what? That's what we need. That's the next question we need to ask at the debate: is have you read Dune, and give us your summary of
How
its
good,
most
how
salient
great
point.
on your list of great things.
That would be
is
awesome.
Dune?
That would be awesome.
One or
Can you relate our current domestic situation to the Kwisatz Haderach? Can you?
are you House Atreides or? All right, boys.
Are you
Well,
free
thank you
spice
very
trade
much.
or protectorate spice trade? What are we talking here?
Have you ridden the sandworm?
when after your inauguration do you plan
How
to
do
ride
you-
the sandworm?
Oh no, we can even tie it into we can even tie it into AI. How do you
Just
feel
the
about
president
thinking
riding a
machines?
sandworm in the inauguration parade?
coming down Pennsylvania Avenue towards the Capitol.
Destroying Washington D.C. because it's too
I
big
know.
for the street.
No, it would have to be a big float. Come on, realistically, they'd have to make a float, and that would just make it more ridiculous, which of course means more appropriate. So,
Well, we could even tie it into the AI question. How do you feel about thinking machines, new machines?
and that'll be the question for the next podcast. How do you
Yes,
feel about
indeed.
thinking machines? I feel fine. All right,
Feel fine.
asked and answered. All right, boys.
All right, till next
Thank
time.
you very much. Till
Till
next
later.
time, and always remember.
This concludes our Speak Nerd and Enter broadcast.